Hello friends, today we are going to deal with the poem Dover Beach written by Matthew Arnold. Now Matthew Arnold is one among the three great poets of the Victorian era. The other two, as you know, are Alfred Lord Tennyson and Robert Browning. Among these three, it was Matthew Arnold who was the idealist, and he was the one who I guess had the most sensitive soul, and he was really worried about the loss of faith that he was witnessing in Victorian England, or not only in Victorian England, maybe in the industrialized world in general, because Victorian era was an age of industrialization where there was rapid progress with a lot of machines and factories and all being set up, and people were beginning to lose faith in religion, and they were beginning to question the existence of God. And Arnold, being an extremely devout person, he was really worried about the future of the world which does not believe in God. So this particular poem, Dover Beach, is a very short poem, but a poem which is very profound in its thought, where he expresses all his fear for this world devoid of faith in God. So let us go directly to the poem. Now this poem, Dover Beach, was written in 1851 following his marriage to Frances Lucy Whiteman on 10th June 1851. So that was the day of their wedding, and it is believed that the companion he talks about in this poem is his wife. And the poem, though it was written in 1851, was published only later in 1867. And this place called Dover Beach, it is actually a place in England. It is a port in the southeastern coast of Kent in England. And this is supposed to be one among the cinque ports, or the 5 important ports of ancient England. And this port of Dover is also called the key to England, because this is the place where there is the shortest distance between England and France. There is just 21 miles of distance between Dover and the place called Calais, Calais in France. So it is the nearest point between these two countries, and so maybe that is why it was called the key to England. And so the poet seems to be there in Dover, on the Dover Beach or somewhere near that. It is night time, and he is watching the beach, the moonlit beach, and the moon and the ocean, and that is where all these thoughts come to him. And so that is the setting of the poem, and he is accompanied by somebody, and it is believed that it was his wife who was there with him that night. So this is how the poem goes. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast the light gleams and is gone, the cliffs of England stand, glimmering and vast, out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray, where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return. Up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of fate was once, too, at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, For the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Okay, so that was the poem Dover Beach. Now coming back to stanza 1, he opens with this line, the sea is calm tonight. So this opening line, which appears to be very tranquil and peaceful, belies the tension that is soon to come. You think that it's going to be a very romantic poem, a poem where he is going to talk about the sea and the moonlight, because in the next line he says the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. So you are led to think that he is in a very romantic mood. So in the first few lines there is nothing to tell us that unpleasant things are soon to follow. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. Strait, you know what a strait is, isn't it? It's a narrow stretch of water between two land masses. So here it is the English Channel that he is talking about, the channel that separates England and France. So the moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. So standing there in Dover, looking that side, they can see the French shore on the other side of the sea. So he talks about a light on the French coast that gleams and is gone. So maybe the reference is to a lighthouse far away on the French coast. He can see the lighthouse. So the lighthouse, has a kind of a revolving light that shines and then goes off because it is turning, and so he can see that. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. So again, on this side, on the side where he's standing, he can see the hills, the cliffs of England, and glimmering in the moonlight, because moonlight is falling upon these cliffs and it is kind of shining, and it is vast, huge mountains, and out in the tranquil bay. So they're jutting out into the bay and tranquil. So it is a picture of perfect calm. Everything is quiet. There is the sea, there is the moon that drenches everything in white, silvery color, and you can see the hill, you can see the light on the French coast. Everything is tranquil. And then he invites his companion, maybe his wife, and he tells her, come to the window, sweet is the night air. So he asks her to come and stand, because he is standing at the window and he's looking out of it, and he invites her also to come and stand next to him, because there is a very cool and a sweet night air blowing. So come and stand here and enjoy it and have a look at this wonderful landscape and the scenery. And as soon as he says this, the poor lady must have come and stood next to him, and from the next line onwards the mood changes. Okay, suddenly all the romance is gone, and then unpleasant thoughts start coming into his mind, wave after wave, just like the waves of the ocean. Unpleasant and disturbing thoughts keep coming into his mind, and he says, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return upon the high strand, begin and cease and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. So that is a long line. That's one line, actually one sentence. So what he says is, he says everything is beautiful, but only here means except for, but standing there, he says, just listen and you can hear something else. What is it that you can hear? The grating roar of pebbles. And so there is this line of spray. Spray, is that the part where the waves meet the land. You have the surf, the white bubbles and the froth, that is what he means, spray. And he says there, when the long line of spray, it meets the moon blanched land. Blanche in French means white. So moon blanched means the whole land, the beach looks white under the silvery white light of the moon. That is what you mean, moon drenched, bathed in the white moonlight. And so he says, as you look at this, just listen, and you can hear a very unpleasant roaring, grating noise. Now, what is grating? Grating is that very rough kind of a noise, a very harsh noise. When you have a metal moving against metal, so that kind of a very rough noise that sometimes gets on to your nerves. So he says he can hear the grating roar of pebbles. That is, when the waves go, they take a lot of shingles or pebbles. Shingles and pebbles, you will come across the word shingles soon in the poem. They are round stones. You have a lot of pebbles in the beach. So he says the waves take these pebbles along with them, and when they come back, they throw the stones onto the beach, and you can hear this roaring noise of the pebbles moving and being thrown back onto the beach. Or the high strand here means the upward sloping beach. The beach is kind of climbing up, and so the waves are coming, they are throwing the shingles or the pebbles, and they're going back. So you can hear that grating noise. Begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness. So he says he is listening to this noise of the waves coming in, going back, the grating sound of the pebbles. It stops and starts, it goes on, and there is a tremulous cadence. Cadence is a kind of a rhythm, tremulous, trembling. Okay, so there is a kind of a rhythm you can feel in that coming and going of waves. And in this cadence, he can sense something. And what is it that he senses? He can sense a note of sadness. And it is not something new. It is something that has been there all the while. It is an eternal note of sadness. So now slowly all the romance has disappeared, and now reality sinks in, and he says that as I look at the beach, as I look at the waves, I can begin to hear the eternal note of sadness. Okay, now from this sad note, he goes on to the next stanza, and he maintains that melancholic tone. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean. So he says, you remember he told us that it is an eternal note, it is not a new kind of a cadence or a note that he has been listening to. Hundreds of years ago, Sophocles too heard this. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, Sophocles too heard this. And who is this Sophocles? Sophocles is the ancient Greek dramatist, one of the three Greek tragedians, the other two being Aeschylus and Euripides. And so he says, Sophocles too must have heard the same sad music when he stood on the shore of the Aegean Sea. And the Aegean Sea is a part of the Mediterranean Sea, which is situated between Greece and Turkey. There is one part of the Mediterranean Sea which is kind of caught between Greece and Turkey. So that is the Aegean. And so Sophocles, that is the place where Sophocles lived. So he too must have sat on the beach, and he too, I am sure, must have heard this eternal note of sadness. And it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. So what is he talking about actually? He's talking about this, when he talks about this sad note, he's talking about the misery of human life. So the sorrows that human beings have been subject to, the wars and the hatred and the violence and the pain and all that, the disappointments and the frustrations and the loss of faith, everything. So he says, I am sure that Sophocles too must have heard this very same sad note. and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. So Sophocles again was a writer of tragedies, and Matthew Arnold had a great fascination for the Greek and Roman classic masters. So he was a great admirer of the literature produced in Greece and Rome. So he wonders whether it is this music of sadness, this melancholic tone, that prompted people like Sophocles to write their great tragedies. And so that's what he says here. He heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. And so it was centuries back that Sophocles heard it. Now he says, we, the two of us standing here at this beach, we too hear the same thing. So he's kind of establishing a link between Sophocles and himself. A poet of yonder, of a past age, and a poet of the present age. So maybe he's telling us that at all times, poets are people who have always responded to such impulses. They can hear things that others don't. They can see things that others don't see. And so, just like Sophocles heard this, he says, now, today, I too, we too can hear this note. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. So he is standing on the shores of England in Dover Beach, and this is very, very distant from the Aegean shores. That is why distant northern sea. It is also in the north. And so he says, as we stand here and listen to this music or this rhythm, the sad rhythm, we too think of something. Similar thoughts, sad thoughts, arise in our minds too. Now going on to the next stanza. The sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. So what really upsets Matthew Arnold is that people are losing faith in religion. And he is so very worried about the condition of man with no God to protect him. That is why he says, once upon a time, the sea of faith was full. You can see the sea of faith, you can see the capital letters. So that shows how much of importance he gives to the sea of faith, or the faith in God, religion, spirituality. And so once upon a time, so he says maybe when he was young, or even before that, the earlier generation, people had so much of faith in God, and that helped them to overcome all difficulties. And so that is why he says that the sea of faith was full, and round the earth shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. So, and this sea of faith, it protected people like the sea protects the earth. Girdle here means a belt that you tie around your dress at your waist, and so it holds the whole thing together. And so he says, like earlier, the sea was like folds of a bright girdle furled. Furled means something that is folded, wrapped up. So God and the faith in God wrapped up people inside. They were all safe inside, like in a cocoon. Just like you have the sea surrounding all the land masses on the globe. So same way, the sea of faith protected them, gave them a kind of a secure feeling from all the evil things that happened around them. But now he says, but now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear, the naked shingles of the world. So he says, now I'm frightened, because now all that I can hear is the sound of the sea going back, the sound of the retreating ocean. So the sea of faith is slowly losing its hold, and it is kind of ebbing away, just like a tide, the flow and the ebb of a tide. So here now the flow is, there is very little water remaining in the sea, and the water is kind of moving backward. and it is this sound, the withdrawing roar of the retreating sea of faith that he can hear. And it is that sound that he can hear in the night wind. Down vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. So shingles, I told you, are pebbles. And so now, once the water is gone, there are just these pebbles scattered all over. So when he can hear the roaring sound of the water withdrawing from these pebbles. And he is very, very abject and sad. He's disheartened. He's disappointed with what is going on around him. And he tells his wife, "Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain." So he says, the only hope that we have is in each other. So he tells his wife, let us at least love each other, because once the faith of God disappears, there would be nothing to hold humanity together. People will be divided, people will start hating each other, there would be so much of violence. We can say that what Matthew Arnold prophesied became true, isn't it? Because very soon, now Matthew Arnold died in 1888, but after that, in the 1914, you had the First World War coming, and then again you had in the 1935 to 40s, you had the Second World War coming. So this, what he was foretelling in this poem, it seems to have come true. And so he says, "Oh, my dear love, let us at least love each other. Let us be sincere and truthful to one another, because there is nothing else for us to look forward to. Because this world that lies in front of us," now maybe he's talking about the world in front of him, and again a new world, because they are newly married. He wrote this poem immediately after his marriage, it is believed, and so naturally a young and a newly married couple would have a lot of dreams, they would have a lot of plans and schemes. So he says that this life which lies in front of us like a land of dreams, it is so various, so beautiful, so new, it is just like a dream. That's why he says it's a land of dreams, because it is not real. Reality is very cruel. Reality is very, very unpleasant. All that we think it is not. Even this very beautiful beach that we see in front of us, the moon-blanched, silvery beach in front of us, it's just an illusion. In broad daylight, this is not how this beach is going to look. And so he tells her that he kind of admits that he has lost faith in this world, and he now the only thing that we can do, human beings can do, is to trust each other and protect the trust of one another. And so he says, everything that you see, everything that looks beautiful, looks new, it's all false. It really hath neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. So there is no kind of comfort that you can expect. There is no joy, there is no love, no light. Light means hope, most probably. Certitude means certainty. There is no peace, there is no help for pain. Even if somebody is in pain, somebody is in trouble, nobody would offer him help. So the world without the presence of God has become a selfish world. Everybody has kind of shrunk into his own shell. Nobody is bothered about what is happening to the others, especially with the arrival of industrialization. All these villages, the people started migrating to the cities from villages, and in villages always there is a connection between people. Everybody knows everybody else, but in a big city that is not the case. So all people are strangers to each other. They all come together there just to earn a living. There is nothing that holds them together. And so everybody is kind of competing with the others. So each man sees the other man as his competitor. So looking at it, it's altogether very bleak and an unpleasant and a sad picture that he's giving us. So there is no joy, no love, no light, no certitude, no peace, no help for pain. You can see that this desolation that Arnold felt, he has expressed in other poems too. We had discussed a poem, The Scholar Gypsy, earlier. There too, This is exactly what he says, that the modern world has degraded itself. There is nothing to look forward to. And that is why he tells the scholar gypsy, who is a representative of the earlier, untainted, innocent world, to keep away from the modern people, because we would corrupt you also. Run away from us, he says. So it's the same unhappy feeling that he gives us here. And then he says, and we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. So he says, there is no certainty about anything in this world today. We don't know what's going to happen the next moment. And we are as on a darkling plain. Now here he is referring to a battlefield where the battle is going on at night. Okay, and for in this particular lines, he was inspired by this account of the ancient Greek writer called Twosides. Twosides had written a very momentous work called The History of the Peloponnesian War, and that particular war book, it was translated by Matthew Arnold's father. Thomas Arnold had translated this Twosides' History of the Peloponnesian War in 3 huge volumes. And so in that particular work, there is this incident about how there was a night battle in a place called Epipolae. It is the night battle of Epipolae in 413 BC between the Athenians and the Spartans. And this happened in this place called Sicily. So the two sides involved in the war, one was the Athenians and the other the Spartans, and they had a night battle in this place called Epipolae. So then, listening from far, one could hear the cries of the people, and you can also imagine the condition of the people who were fighting. They wouldn't be able to see properly, they wouldn't know who they are killing, who they are fighting against. Are they killing their enemy or their friend? They wouldn't know. So that is the kind of a condition that the modern world is in. We are in darkness. So here you can see that Arnold is making an allusion to this particular incident mentioned in Thucydides' book. And so modern man living in this chaotic world, a world where there is no God to guide them, where there is no God to give them hope or show them the right direction, we are all like soldiers battling each other in the dark on a battlefield. So that is the condition of the modern world. So Matthew Arnold, he seems to be very pessimistic, and of the 3 poets of the Victorian era, he was the one who was most pessimistic in his attitude, because he really took it to heart and he was really worried about what is going to happen to this world. And you can see all that anxiety is presented here in this particular poem. And as I said earlier, time proved that what he said was true, that we are in a battlefield. Very soon that is what happened. So that is why we say that poets are often prophets, because they can see much ahead of their times. So this is one instance. And so that is the poem, The Dover Beach. But looking at it carefully, you can also see that though he is pessimistic, there is one gleam of hope that he offers. And what is that? He says to his wife, "Ah, love, let us be true to one another." So that seems to be the crux of this poem, or that seems to be the message that he wants to tell us, that no matter what happens, let each individual try to be honest. Let us try to be sincere in our relationships. Let us try to help each other out, and in these very dark times, let us support each other. Let us come forward and keep alive the faith in humanity. It is true that there is a lot of bleakness and melancholy and sadness, and altogether it is gloomy. But then it is our duty to find something positive, and this is the positive message. Let us trust each other. let us be there for each other. And together, let us form a very happy tomorrow.